Hey everyone, and welcome to the ProPresenter remote webinar. I'm so glad to see all of you here, or not see all of you, but hear all of you here, all around the world, both in the US and globally. Super exciting and glad you could join us today. My name is Amanda Kongvold, and I'm the product manager for ProPresenter. I'm super excited to talk to you today about ProPresenter Remote and everything that it can do, all of the ways you can use it, and get excited to hear more from y'all as well. So first thing, as I start to talk about introducing myself, I do want to know, have you used ProPresenter Remote before? If you have, super excited you're here. Hopefully we can still teach you something new. If you haven't, excited to show you what it can do. But first, as I said, my name is Amanda Kongfold. I've actually been a ProPresenter user for a very long time. I've been using ProPresenter since about 2008. Does anyone remember the ProPresenter 3 days? Some of those OG ProPresenter users. But I've had the opportunity to use ProPresenter and some of our other products in many different circumstances, both growing up in my local church, but also in corporate events, conferences, all sorts of different places. So hopefully you can trust my expertise here as we talk about ProPresenter Remote and get to talk about how we can use that specific product in different ways, and hopefully in ways that can befit your circumstance as well. So going straight to ProPresenter Remote. Um, when we first made ProPresenter Remote, we made it to where you could basically control ProPresenter, but without having to sit directly at the ProPresenter screen or machine. That allows you to have a lot of different ways that you can use ProPresenter, but it kind of boils down to three big things. So first, we have flexibility. ProPresenter can be used both in, there we go. ProPresenter Remote can be used for teams of all different sizes. Whether you're a one-person team, just trying to get your church of 20 people to 100 people together, or you're a mega church, or you're a corporate event, all of these different teams can use ProPresenter Remote in their unique circumstance, and there's a benefit for all those kinds of people. Additionally, we have mobility. Mobility in the sense that if as long as I'm on the same network connection and have a strong network connection to my ProPresenter machine, I can be anywhere I need to be, whether that's backstage, whether that's in the booth, whether that's walking through the audience. I can be able to control ProPresenter while I'm on the move, which is super awesome and a lot harder to do with carrying a laptop around. So again, ProPresenter Remote allows me to have my phone or my iPad or my Android device and control ProPresenter while being on the move. Lastly, it also allows you to have control. It's kind of in the name, it's a remote. It allows you to control different parts of ProPresenter, again, from the palm of your hand, uh, and have a lot of different capabilities that wouldn't be able to happen, wouldn't be, excuse me, would be harder to have happen through other tools. So with that, I want to be able to get straight into our ProPresenter remote and walk through it and to kind of go through some of the different um, uses it might have. Now, if you're looking for more specific advice, maybe more in-depth tutorials, we'll have some resources for that after the webinar. I'm just going to do kind of a quick overview for now. But if you have any questions about things as I mentioned them, there is a Q&A that we'll have at the end. So there should be a Q&A tab in the Zoom call. So go ahead and put your questions there, and I'll try to answer as many of those at the end as I can. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and come over to my ProPresenter machine. If you'll give me a moment to get my screen share up and running, we will look at ProPresenter Remote. So over here on the right-hand side, you can see my ProPresenter Remote screen. I'm just screen sharing that from my iPhone right here. So you're seeing exactly what I would be seeing on my iPhone. A lot of this UI you'll see is also a little bit different for iPad. There's a little bit more space, but today I'll be looking at my iPhone. So first, I want to start with the screen I'm looking at right now, which is the remote screen. This allows me to see what slide is both active as well as the next slide. But there's a lot of other cool stuff here as well. So if I go up to the top, I can choose whether to see the next presentation or not. So if I'm going to come actually over to my playlist, this kind of shows us a little bit better. Let's pretend that we are in our first song. This would allow me to see the next presentation in that song. And I will get my Pro Remote to hopefully update here for me in just a moment. Let's see. It's going to take a second. There we go. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and come over to the presentation tab, and we'll start here actually. So looking at the presentation tab, I have my ability to see what all is included in both my playlists, but also in a library. So currently looking at here, and the thumbnails are loading for what is the first song in my presentation in my playlist. So this allows me to be able to trigger things directly from the presentation view. I can see it in a grid. I can also see this as I click on this. Oh, there we go. I can also view this as a list if you prefer that way to see all the different slides. This is really good if you're the kind of person who might be triggering slides for songs or for a sermon, and you kind of want that big overarching view, more similar to what you would see in ProPresenter. This view lets you see kind of a grid or a list of all the slides included in a presentation with the ability to trigger those. And I know it's hard to see here, but you can see that as I trigger them here, they are updating here as well out to my output. So as I said, you can also view, I can go to the different songs, I can go to my sermon in this presentation view, and I can also go to different libraries and see all of those things there as well. Then we have the remote tab, that's where we were earlier. And I'm gonna come and see why this isn't updating the way I want it to, and that's okay. We're gonna come over this way. And it's behaving a little bit badly this morning. As you know, this is live. We're all in production. Sometimes this kind of happens, but I'm going to go ahead and try and talk about this ProPresenter remote tab anyway. So from here, we have some different controls that we can see. You can enable the next presentation. So this would allow you, if you're going through a whole service, you can go straight to the next presentation once you're at the end of your current one. You can also see slide notes. I'm going to mention that a little bit more in a moment. And then follow the current presentation. So it's still saying that this is my current presentation, totally fine. But that's how you can kind of see from the remote tab. And I'll quickly go ahead and go on to my next tab, which is timers. I use this part of ProRemote all the time. So I love having the ability to control timers, configure timers without having to be physically in front of my ProPresenter machine. So from here, I can see all the different timers I already have configured. And if you look down here on my actual UI in the app, you can see that they all correspond. And if I start one, it will also start in the app itself. If I want to go ahead and say, oh, I meant for that to be a 15-minute timer, not a 25-minute timer, I can come in here and I can quickly set it to be 15. There we go. And then reset and start it again, and we're good to go. All from my ProPresenter remote. So timers are a super interesting function. I use it, like I said, all the time. We also have all of our macros. First of all, if you're not already using macros in your circumstance, I highly recommend checking them out. Macros allow you to trigger multiple actions with one trigger or one click. So I have some different actions already here for my macros. I've got my pre-service, my worship, and my sermon looks. In this grid view, I can kind of see them at a high level and then quickly trigger one if I need to just by clicking on it. Or I can also view this as a list and see what all actions are included in each macro. If I need to adjust the size, I'm able to do that and switch between my different macro collections. Now to go to some of the other pages that are available, I'll come to this more and we'll look at our audio. As my audio loads up here, you can see I have a few songs already loaded up. I can trigger some different audio files. Let's say maybe you have a play that you're doing at your church and you need someone to quickly like trigger a sound effect or something like that. You can easily do this with the audio tab of ProRemote. There's also the stage tab. This allows me to, if I have a stage layout that has a stage message, I can quickly type that in here and send that. I can also change which stage layouts are active. So similar to how this works over in the show controls area of my main UI, I can change which of my stage display layouts are active from here. Now there's also the messages. So messages, if you've used them in ProPresenter, I've used this in churches when you have like a nursery, for instance, and you say, hey, parents of child number, perhaps, can you come to the nursery? You can also send these messages from ProRemote. All have you However you have it set up in ProPresenter itself, you can then come in here, type those things in, and send a message just from ProRemote. Now, looking at some of our other pages, we also have props. Props, as you see here in ProPresenter, you can trigger these things. So if I want to trigger this lower third, I can click on that, and you can see that Ted Stansel, our lead pastor, his lower third has been triggered from the Pro Remote. Additionally, if I click on it again, it will clear. And just like with macros, if I have multiple collections of props, I can view all of those different things here, and I can view them as a list and as grid view. And lastly, we're going to look at looks. This is a really cool feature with a new Pro Remote. This didn't exist on the classic one because looks didn't exist yet. But looks are awesome to be able to switch between different contexts in your service and different content to different screens. But now from the ProPresenter remote, I can change which look is active from the ProPresenter remote. So I can go from my default to worship to a sermon, and it'll all change in the app as well. And then the only other page remaining is just our settings. Things like I can just keep my device awake. If I need to report an issue, I can do that. Analytics, and also just see what version I'm on, as well as log out if I need to do that. So that's a very quick speed run overview of all the different pages within Pro Remote. But now I would like to go ahead and talk through some specific use cases. Like, cool, Amanda, you've gone through all the pages. I'm still confused. Like, why would I use this? So let's imagine a couple different scenarios. First, let's imagine that I'm the pastor. I'm the person who's going to be giving a sermon or a talk on stage. How could I use Pro Remote for my advantage? So I'm going to come back to the remote tab, and I'm actually going to go ahead and trigger this sermon slide. So I have this sermon set up, and I need my remote to catch up with me, which it might do in just a moment. If not, that's okay. As it loads here, from this perspective, let's say that I'm a pastor and I want to be able to trigger my slides from on stage. Maybe my clicker's battery ran out. Maybe I just want to be able to see everything from my palm of my hand. I want to see my slide notes. All of this I can do from the ProPresenter remote. So looking at the remote tab here, I'm going to go ahead and come up to this top with the three little dots, and I can actually click slide notes. And from here, I can actually see my slide notes for each slide as I have it configured in ProPresenter. So here I have like a story that I want to remember to tell. If I come to this next slide, I says set up James 4 reference, because the next slide is referencing a verse. So like as I can have whatever notes I have as a speaker right there and be able to see it from ProPresenter remote. Additionally, if you don't want your presenter to see all of the timers and macros and all of that, you just want them to see the current slides and be able to trigger those, you can come here to lock remote, and that will hide all of that different UI for you. Next, I'm going to go ahead and unlock that, and we will come to, okay, what pastors are cool. We love our pastors, but I'm a worship leader. How can I use ProPresenter remote? So as we were looking at before, I'm going to go ahead and come back to this slide. And let's say that I'm in rehearsal. I'm trying to go through all of my songs. I want to come and just make sure all these lyrics are correct. I can come over to the songs and just go through them all from my phone and just double check that all the lyrics are correct. I can also come over here and, oops, apologies, guys. And I can follow along. So let's say I'm still in this table view. I'm going to go ahead and go back to grid view. That's how I personally like to run this. And during my rehearsal, I'm just going to go ahead and keep triggering through all the lyrics just to make sure that they're correct. Let's say your volunteer doesn't show up for another hour. I don't want to wait for them. I want to make sure that they're still correct. I can do all this while singing along. I'm not going to sing this song for you right now. Trust me, you don't want me to do that. But as a worship leader, I can also use ProPresenter Remote to just be able to see what my lyric slides are going to look like, call out any things, maybe say, oh, we're actually going to do a different arrangement this week, and let those people who are running the slides during the service know. So that's one other use case. Let's talk about another one that I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. I'm sure a lot of you on your team, you're like the only tech person or only production person for your organization or for your church, and you already have way too much on your plate. Maybe you do have volunteers who are able to run lyrics and everything for you on a Sunday morning, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that has to go on. This is what I love ProPresenter Remote for. Imagine this scenario. You're in rehearsals. someone's doing the lyrics, but you notice that the audience look is wrong or the timer wasn't started. Using ProPresenter Remote and without having to interfere with your volunteer at their screen, I can just come over here and say, oh, that timer is still running. It shouldn't be. I'm going to stop it and go back and make sure that everything is all kosher and good to go. Oh no, like that macro didn't get triggered. I'm just going to quickly come here and trigger that macro. Very easy. I don't have to interfere with my volunteer, and I'm able to quickly make sure that everything is up to date as that, overworked tech director who's still walking all around and has way too many things on their plate. ProPresenter Remote allows you to do some of those quick actions without having to be physically at the machine itself. Additionally, another role I've been in a lot is like as a producer. Um, Maybe I'm producing a big event. Maybe it's your Christmas service or your Easter service, and you have someone who's kind of running the whole show. What they can do is just follow along with where we are in a service from ProPresenter Remote. They can see, okay, they're on this slide of this song. There's only a few more left. So I know that that's going to be going to the next segment of the service soon. Or if you're a producer who's also running timers and say, hey, they're about to run over their time. Go ahead and give them 5 more minutes. I can do this all from ProPresenter Remote as well. And then lastly, maybe you're just a volunteer, and maybe even just looking at the ProPresenter interface over here on the left side of my screen is a little bit intimidating. With that, if you would prefer, maybe you only want to see what's going on right now, you can just run your slides, your lyrics from ProPresenter Remote. Again, if you don't want the iPhone version, there's also an iPad version that's a little bit bigger. And if I don't want these slides to be so small, I can also adjust the size as well. So again, all these different kind of people who can all benefit from ProPresenter Remote. So I did want to ask, I went through a few of them. Maybe I didn't list your specific one, but are any of those a different like use case for ProPresenter Remote that you relate to? Are you the speaker on stage or the worship pastor or the overworked tech director? We just want to hear kind of where you're coming from and like how you might be interested to use ProPresenter Remote. But as you answer that question, I want to go ahead and go over and talk about, I'm going to come back over to my slides and you'll give me a moment to get there. We're going to go ahead and talk about some of the different workflows that you might have with ProPresenter Remote. So as I said, and I mentioned, there's a whole lot of different individuals who can benefit from ProPresenter Remote. And it's not necessarily that you are one person who's going to use it for everything, but it really is a tool that can fit into your current workflow. So I want to reiterate that we can kind of reduce some of the communication breakdowns. So again, maybe your lighting director can't see the ProPresenter screens, can't see what is up next on the playlist. They can have ProPresenter Remote open just to follow along with everybody and just make sure that your lighting director, who may be on the other side of the booth or in a different station, can also be following along. Additionally, those people backstage who may not know what's next in the service can also use ProPresenter Remote to kind of follow along and see what's going on there, or if there's specific notes that they have from their pastor or what have you, they can help by triggering those things using the ProPresenter Remote. Another ways is just to get multiple people be connected in the same service. So like I said, your lighting director can be looking at things, your audio person can be looking at things, and everyone is kind of working together, but not everyone has to be sitting in front of the one ProPresenter machine. ProPresenter Remote allows multiple people to all be connected on their own ProPresenter Remote. So I could have it on my phone, my tech director could have their iPad open, and then our volunteer could be at the machine itself, and all of us could be using ProPresenter Remote and ProPresenter to be able to control the service and have it come off in the best way possible. Excuse me. So let's look at some different examples to talk about different ways that at least I and some of our users have used ProPresenter Remote before. Previously, this past year, I got to do a conference in Hawaii, which I highly recommend. If you're able to do a show in Hawaii, you don't ask what the show is. You say, yes, I will do a show in Hawaii. But I got the opportunity to do this awesome church conference that took place there. And I was in a role where we had two different volunteers running both lyrics on one machine and then all the speaker notes on the other machine. And they were both volunteers and had limited knowledge of ProPresenter, but we also needed to run things like timers and stage displays. But I didn't want to overburden those volunteers with having to worry about that as well. I was able to use the ProPresenter remote myself for both of their machines, connect to each of them and trigger timers, change stage display layouts, all without having to overburden those volunteers with needing to worry about more than just the current slides and what the speaker has called for. It was a super helpful tool for that show and made it a lot easier for that event to go off, especially with volunteers who were kind of timid about how to use ProPresenter. At the end of the day, I think it went off pretty well, and ProPresenter Remote was awesome. And I was super glad to have that capability and be able to control those things in that way. I also want to bring up one of our other users, Sheila Murphy, who I got to meet a couple years ago at Philo. She's actually up in Canada. And Sheila, if you're watching, hello. Thanks for talking to me about how you used Pro Remote before. But Sheila has different events at their church, and they have an event on every week called Celebrate Recovery that they do, but they only have like one volunteer there, and it's usually her. But she also likes to sit in the audience and participate in what the event is doing. So what she's able to do is control all of the slides and everything just using ProPresenter Remote. So she doesn't have to be sitting up in the booth kind of away from everything. She can be sitting in the audience and be able to control all the slides and trigger everything just using ProPresenter Remote and still be able to participate and not feel so aloof. So especially for those one-off kind of weekly events that may not have the same production level as maybe your Sunday mornings, it's a super helpful tool for stuff like that as well. I also wanted to bring up Matt Wallace, who's one of our users. Matt's over in North Carolina, and I'm actually going to read what he said because I want to give it verbatim. But in his services for big services, big events, Easter, Christmas, they use it as a remote viewer. So their lighting director can see what's coming up next, and they just kind of view it that way and use ProPresenter Remote. And that way they can see, okay, when is the bridge coming up? Are we almost to the chorus again? Stuff like that. But I'm going to go ahead and read this other thing that I thought was really cool as well. He said, from a setup, control, and special event perspective, some simple events can be pulled off by one person instead of having multiple people for only a handful of slides. We have video and graphics in a separate room several steps away from our booth in the room. So the remote means we can change slides while programming lights and control visual content and screens with macros, and even more if we set it up. It probably saves me a couple hundred steps each week and more when we have those simple events. So super excited to hear from Matt and how he's using it. Again, even if it only saves you some steps from having to go over to the ProPresenter machine, go back to the lighting machine, go back. ProPresenter Remote allows them to just be able to quickly control things without having to go back and forth, back and forth. Again, super excited to hear from those users about how they're using it. We definitely want to hear how you're using ProPresenter Remote as well. So if you want to, in the chat, you can mention how you're using ProPresenter Remote, or if you're not using it yet, let us know like how you would like to use it. Like what do you want to use it for, or how might you be able to fit it into your certain workflow? But with that, I want to give y'all some tips for making sure you have the best experience possible with ProPresenter Remote. So first, oh, I just asked that question. Apologies. There it is again. Again, if you want to go ahead and tell us in the chat how you're using ProPresenter Remote, we do want to hear that. We're going to be reading through all these comments and definitely love to hear about your specific experience as well. So let's talk about recommended device setup. So some of the nitty-gritty things that we need to have to be able to have a good service flow. First of all, you must be on the same network. So whether that's Wi-Fi or a wired network, everyone has to be talking on the same network. So that's kind of the number one thing that's required. And that is what it is. And with that, connection is only as strong as your network or Wi-Fi connection. So let's say that your booth where your ProPresenter machine is on a different network or is on a network, but like the signal for it is not super strong on the stage. You might want to test some of those things out to make sure that it's strong enough to be able to talk to each other and control things on the same network. Just another tip here. If you don't already have a dedicated Wi-Fi for your production team, I'd highly recommend setting up one. That way, I know I've been in a lot of different scenarios where during a rehearsal, during the week when no one is in the building, the Wi-Fi is great, but everyone shows up on Sunday morning, it's a public Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi gets a little bit slower. If you have a dedicated Wi-Fi just for your production team, that can help negate some of those risks and make sure it's always good to go for your setup and for your production needs. So hot tip there, talk to your IT guy about how you can make that happen. Lastly, as a reminder, the new ProPresenter remote only works on ProPresenter version 20 and newer. So we had an older ProPresenter remote called ProPresenter Remote Classic. If you see the gray icon for your ProPresenter remote, you're on the classic one. That one has been sunset and is no longer supported starting with ProPresenter version 21. So if you are using that old one, we're super happy, glad, and super happy that you were able to use it, but I highly recommend starting to transition to this new remote as that will be the one that's supported moving forward. So again, be on the same network, be on a strong network, and make sure you're on the correct version of ProPresenter. But let's talk about some of the different habits that we can kind of put in place to make sure that when we're using ProPresenter Remote, we're using it in the best way possible. So first of all, I mentioned rehearsal. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Like, especially the more tools and different things you add into your workflow, the more important it is to rehearse those different things. So if you want your pastor or your speaker or your worship leader to start using ProPresenter Remote, go ahead and try it in rehearsals. Have your speaker go physically on stage, have him holding the remote and going through his slides. Make sure that your worship leader knows how to get to the page they want to, and doing all of this ahead of the actual event. If you've never used ProPresenter Remote before, I don't recommend the first time you try to use it be your first Christmas Eve service. There's a lot riding on that, and definitely you want to rehearse these things to make sure it's going to work the way that you expect it to work. And with that, have a backup plan. If ProPresenter Remote stops working, if the Wi-Fi goes down, what is the backup plan? Uh, if that's for your pastor, do we know that someone is watching the slides and can trigger it manually from the ProPresenter machine in case something goes wrong? Do we have another clicker just in case something goes off? Obviously, we never want anything to fail, but as we know, reality happens. So what's your backup plan in case ProPresenter Remote, for some reason or another, stops working or isn't able to do what you want it to do? Always have a backup plan just in case. And obviously, that goes for more than just ProPresenter Remote. Any other tool that you rely on for your production services, have that what if scenario already planned out and have your volunteers trained on what to do in case something does happen. I know, just as a personal anecdote, I used to volunteer at my church doing the lighting, which I didn't get to do very long because I accidentally triggered a blackout twice. And so then they didn't let me do the lighting anymore, and I quickly moved over to video. But we did have a plan for when a blackout accidentally happens, what's the button we need to press to get the lights back on really fast. So again, always make sure to have a backup plan. And then lastly, enable a password. So with the ProPresenter remote, when you enable it in ProPresenter, you are also able to add a password to it. If you are worried about random people downloading the remote and controlling the slides or trying to troll you. Maybe the youth group got a hold of it and want to pull a prank on your pastor. Go ahead and enable a password so that not just any random person can control your ProPresenter slides, especially if you're like at a big corporate event and you don't want people to see the slides ahead of time. I highly recommend enabling a password. And then if that password gets shared with a whole bunch of people, you can always change it and it will require people to log in again on their next time using the remote. So again, just an added layer of security if you are worried about different people not in your production team controlling some of your ProPresenter slides. So with that, I'm just going to kind of go ahead and wrap up. But a lot of what I've said and a lot of these resources are also available on our support website. In our knowledge base articles, they go into more detail about some of the different pages that we talked about. So if you haven't already, check that out. Scan the QR code on the screen to go ahead and get you straight there. And then if you have a specific issue saying, hey, Amanda, I'm having this issue with ProPresenter Remote, I just want to remind you, like probably right now in this Q&A is not the best way for us to troubleshoot that issue. So please contact our support team to be able to report those issues, and we'd love to talk about it more. So you can go to our support team website or in the app, go to the help menu and then report an issue, and that'll get you directly talking to an agent very soon. But with that, just to recap what we've talked about, we love ProPresenter Remote, and that's because of its flexibility, its mobility, and its control. We talked about all the different pages that exist in the ProPresenter Remote, as well as a lot of the different people who might benefit from using it. Then we talked about some of the specific setup notes and some of the specific habits you want to put in place with using ProPresenter Remote. But with that, I know there's some Q&A questions, so I'm going to hop on over here and start looking at some of these. So apologies as I answer them, but we will talk about that. So from Rachel, how many devices can be used with the same ProPresenter instance? That's a great question. So there's not a limit per se. You can have as many ProPresenter remotes all connected to the same machine at the same time. Now, if y'all are all trying to do contradictory things, just like someone who's trying to all click on the same slide at one time, you might face some issues with that. So you can have as many people connected to a ProPresenter instance as you like. There's no cap, but know that there are some risks there depending on what kind of things are being triggered and if they're contradicting each other. So just a warning there, but if you want your whole team to have access to ProPresenter Remote and all using it at the same time, by all means, that should be working pretty well. And if it's not, again, let our support team know and we'll try to figure out what's going on there. Then we have from Theophilus, I apologize for butchering that. How would I connect my phone with ProPresenter on a laptop? Do I need a router so both devices are on the same network, or does it work through Bluetooth? So it does work over network. So it's not necessarily a Bluetooth connection. It doesn't connect that way, but it connects over network. So if your Wi-Fi or if your laptop is on Wi-Fi, your phone would just need to be on the same Wi-Fi or your iPad on the same Wi-Fi, and it could connect that way. So you don't require a wired connection. Like currently, I'm in a space where I don't have a wired connection, so I'm just on the same Wi-Fi as my machine on my remote. So it works that way. Hopefully, I've answered that question. If not, let our support team know, and we'll try to follow up on what your specific circumstance is. From Richard, can the PC and remote app keep each other synchronized? I.e., if the person at the PC clicks to a new song, the Pro Remote app sees the same thing and can advance the slides. Absolutely. So in the remote tab, there's a selection that you can do to follow current presentation. So as long as you have that selected, it should follow along. So whether I'm at the ProPresenter machine and I trigger something, or I'm at the remote and I trigger something, they should both stay in sync with what is being triggered. So hopefully that answers your question, but you just want to make sure that you have current or follow current presentation enabled there in the remote tab. Now, if you're on the presentation tab, you'll want to just be able to click through. That one doesn't have that quite same capability at that point, but the remote tab is where you'll be able to do that. Now, from Rares, can you trigger a Bible verse from ProPresenter Remote? That's a great question. So currently, if you have your Bible verses already in a presentation, then yes, you can trigger it like any other presentation that you have. There's not currently the ability to use like the Bible tool or Bible view in ProPresenter Remote, but that is something that we want to add to it in the future. So definitely let us know, like, hey, I would love ProPresenter Remote, but I want to trigger Bible verses from ProPresenter Remote. Let us know how important that is to you, and like that might influence how soon we're able to get that functionality working. But I know that is something that we would love to add to ProPresenter Remote. So if that's something that would make your day, let us know about it so that we can get that added in the future. Great question. Um, from Selenia, I have the old remote downloaded. Which is recommended, the old one or the new one? As I said before, if you want to continue using ProPresenter Remote with the latest versions of ProPresenter, you're going to need the new ProPresenter Remote. The old classic ProPresenter Remote only works up until version 20. Version 20 is the last version that you can use that classic remote on. So if you're on an older version of ProPresenter, and you're staying there, then that's fine. You can keep using the classic remote. You paid for it, you already have it. But if you want to use the new remote and continue forward with us in future versions and future features, when we add Bible triggering, you'll want to make sure that you're on the new ProPresenter remote. Great question as well. From Yvonne, do you have to have multiple seats to use the remote feature? Great question. No. So the ProPresenter remote is included with your subscription. Excuse me. Goodness. So as long as you have a ProPresenter subscription, you get access to the ProPresenter remote included. And as I said before, you can have as many devices connected as you wish. There's no cap on that. As long as you're paying for the ProPresenter subscription, everything will connect and you can have as many devices connected as you want to. But again, great question. A couple people have asked, excuse me, can you clear content in a ProPresenter remote? Good question. I didn't really get to touch on that, but in the remote tab, there is a clear option that you can have to clear different layers. You can use your clear groups there, all of that from the ProPresenter remote tab. So apologies for not going over that. Again, it's mentioned in those resources. So if you want more details on how that works, highly recommend looking at our support articles for that. But yes, you can clear layers from ProPresenter remote. And let's see, got a couple more from Chuck. If slides are linked on the ProPresenter machine to MIDI-like cues from another computer, will a remote also trigger the MIDI cue attached to the slide? Again, great question. So MIDI cues are a way to trigger different tools outside of ProPresenter. It sounds like Chuck is using it for lighting cues. As long as all of that is configured on your ProPresenter machine in the correct way, then yes, triggering something from the ProPresenter remote, if I click on a slide that has a MIDI cue action, that would just be like if I triggered it from the ProPresenter machine itself. It'll do the same exact thing. So there's no limits there. As long as everything is configured correctly, yes, you can trigger different MIDI cues for lightings. If you want to do it from a macro, you're also able to do that all using either ProPresenter remote or your main ProPresenter machine. And from Laura, can you add a song into the presentation from the remote? Another great question. So at this moment, no. All of your presentations, your editor, all of that stuff just exists on ProPresenter itself. So if I wanted to add a song to a playlist, I would need to do that from the ProPresenter machine. Now, if I just wanted to trigger a song from that presentation and it already existed in my library, I could go to my library and then trigger that song, but I can't necessarily move it from the library to a playlist. I can't add a new presentation from the remote. None of that is currently possible as we wanted the remote to really be focused on controlling ProPresenter, not being a substitute for ProPresenter. So hopefully that makes sense. If that is something that you're interested in, like a version of ProPresenter where you can do everything, but like maybe more mobile or like maybe on an iPad app, if that's something you're interested in, like let us know. I would love to know your use case for that and learn more about that. But currently, no, you cannot add new presentations or edit the presentations themselves from the ProPresenter remote. And I got one more question here from Earl. Can you use macros to enable a video that's in ProPresenter? Yes, yeah. So again, all of this is configured on ProPresenter itself, but I can have a macro that triggers a video. I can have it trigger a video input. I can have it trigger a slide, or not a slide. I can have it trigger an image. I can have it start a timer. Basically, any action that you could do on a slide, you can also do on a macro. And since you have macros that can be triggered from ProPresenter remote, that means you can also trigger it mobily that way. So if I have a macro that's set up to, let's say, trigger my countdown video, trigger a timer on my stage display, and also change my audience look, all of those things can be done on one macro. And then I can trigger that macro from my mobile device or from my iPad using the ProPresenter remote. And awesome. So that's all the questions I've got for you guys. If you have any questions that we didn't get to answer, or again, if you're having a specific technical issue that you want to talk to our team about, I highly recommend reaching out to our awesome support team. They would love to talk to you guys after this and troubleshoot any issues you might be having. And again, check out our resources. We've got a lot of different articles in our support knowledge base, and we also have a lot of different tutorials available on our YouTube channel. We're coming out with a whole lot more of those every day, so excited to have more resources there for you guys as well. If you liked this webinar and want another webinar on something different, like let us know that as well. We'd love to host more of these and make sure that we're giving you guys the content and the advice and different things that you need. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you in another webinar in the future. Thanks, y'all.